Father is not a man who raises his voice. He built his construction company in Edmonton over 40 years, starting with a second-hand truck and a crew of 3, and he still says the quietest person in the room usually knows something nobody else does. He raised me to believe that, too. I grew up in the house off White Avenue, a wide Victorian with dark wood floors and a kitchen that always smelled like cardamom because my father drinks chai every morning at 5, the same way he has since before I was born. My mother passed when I was 11. After that, it was just the two of us and my grandmother until she moved to assisted living in Sherwood Park. We weren't the kind of family that talked about feelings at the dinner table. We talked about work, about weather, about the Oilers, about what needed to be done. My father showed love through logistics. He showed up. That's the best way I can say it. When I was 26, I met my husband at a fundraiser for the food bank downtown. He had an easy smile and a real estate license and a story about his family that made sense the way a well-rehearsed story always does. Too neat, maybe. But I wasn't looking for seams back then. His mother was originally from Montreal. She had the kind of energy that fills a room and empties it at the same time. I remember thinking she was impressive. I thought a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. We dated for 14 months. My father met him 3 times before the engagement and said very little, which I mistook for approval. I understand now that my father was watching. He has always watched more than he speaks. We married in September, a small ceremony at a venue in Canmore, because my husband said he wanted the mountains behind us, and I thought that was romantic. My father gave a toast that was 11 sentences long. I counted because it felt short at the time, and I remember being a little stung by it. Now I think he was being careful with his words. We moved into a townhouse in the west end of Edmonton. It was a nice neighborhood, quiet, close to the ravine where people walk dogs in the morning. My husband handled the finances because, as he explained early on, he was already managing investment properties and it made more sense to run everything through one set of accounts. He'd set up a joint account, he said. I had access, he said. What I didn't know, what I genuinely did not know, was that my father had been quietly depositing money into that account every month. Not an extraordinary sum, he told me later, but $15,000 a month. It was meant to give me breathing room, he said. He knew my salary as a dental hygienist covered my basics, but not much more. He'd never told me directly because he thought my husband had told me, and my husband had let him believe that. There was a brief period early in the marriage where my husband mentioned offhandedly that the family support had been set up and was running. I thought he meant a vague inheritance structure. I moved on. I didn't ask. That is the part I live with the most. The first year, I noticed the small things. My mother-in-law had opinions about how I kept the kitchen. She visited twice a month and always found something. The dish rack in the wrong place, the spices not alphabetized, the blinds tilted the wrong direction. My husband never said anything to her. When I brought it up with him later, he'd say she meant well. She was old-fashioned. She was just that way. I absorbed it and kept going. I was working 5 days a week at the clinic and picking up extra Saturday shifts to help with what I thought were tight months. My husband told me his real estate commissions had been slow. The market was correcting. Cash flow was uneven. I believed him because the alternative, that I was being lied to in a structured and deliberate way, was something I wasn't ready to consider. My mother-in-law came over one Tuesday and found me eating leftovers for dinner because I hadn't had time to shop. She made a comment about how a woman should always have a full fridge. That same weekend, I learned later, she and my husband flew to Kelowna for what she called a property viewing that involved a spa package at a resort and dinner at a restaurant with a $200 tasting menu. I saw a charge on what I thought was a cable bill. It wasn't. I was 7 months pregnant when I realized I had never once looked at the joint account balance. I want to explain what I mean by that because when I told people this since, the reaction is always a version of, "How did you not know?" And I understand that reaction. I have it about myself, but I had been conditioned, gradually, over 2 years, to understand that the finances were complicated and managed and not my lane. Every time I'd asked a specific question, I got an answer that was just technical enough to make me feel undereducated and just reassuring enough to make me stop asking. It was a slow process. I only recognized it as a process afterward. I kept working through my 7th month. My back hurt. My feet hurt. I was on my feet for 8-hour shifts running an ultrasonic scaler and then coming home to a husband who ordered takeout on my credit card and complained about the traffic on Jasper Avenue. I told myself this was normal. I told myself a lot of things. My daughter was born in January at the Royal Alexandra. It was 22 below outside, and I remember the drive home feeling both enormous and very small. We named her, well, I'm not saying her name here. That's the one thing I'm keeping private. But I will say she and my father's expression from the first day, that particular stillness. 6 weeks after she was born, I went back to work because we needed the income. I was wearing a pair of scrub pants with a split seam I'd safety pinned because I hadn't bought new ones. My coat from the previous winter no longer buttoned properly. I wasn't complaining about any of this at the time. I just kept moving. My father came to visit on a Saturday in early March. He took the QE2 from Edmonton and arrived at 9 in the morning with chai ingredients and a bag of groceries and said nothing about the state of the house, which I was only partially keeping up with. I was sitting in the nursing chair in the living room when he looked at me. Really looked at me the way he does when he's done watching and is ready to speak, and said, "You look like you've been carrying something heavy." I said I was tired. "New baby." He nodded. Then he said, not unkindly, "Did the monthly transfers not go through?" I looked at him. He looked at me. "What monthly transfers?" I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said very carefully, "I have been putting $15,000 a month into your joint account since your wedding." I remember the nursing chair. I remember the sound of the furnace clicking on. I remember my daughter making a small noise. I said, "I have never seen that money." My father's face did something I have only seen it do one other time, which was the night my mother went into the hospital for the last time. It went very still and then very closed, like a door shutting. He asked me to show him the account. My husband was not home. He was at what he described as a Saturday morning showing, which had become a recurring thing on weekends. I pulled up the joint account on my laptop and my father sat down next to me at the kitchen table and we looked at it together. 18 months of deposits, 15,000 each, queer as anything on the incoming side. On the outgoing side, transfers. Dozens of them, to an account I didn't recognize. Amounts ranging from 4,000 to 12,000, sometimes 3 in 1 week. The account number was always the same. It was not our mortgage, it was not our utilities, it was not any bill I had ever seen. My father looked at the screen for a long time without speaking. Then he said, quietly, "Who does that account belong to?" I didn't know. He took out his phone and called his lawyer. His name is someone I won't mention here. He's been my father's lawyer for 20 years, an older man in a downtown Edmonton firm, who speaks the way my father does, precisely and without decoration. My father explained the situation in about 4 sentences. He asked what the next steps were. He wrote something down on the back of a grocery receipt. By Monday morning, we had a forensic accountant involved. By the following Friday, we knew. The account receiving the transfers belonged to my mother-in-law. Not a joint account, not a household account. Her personal account, in her name, at a credit union in Point Claire, Quebec, where she still technically maintained a residence. 18 months, $198,000. My husband, when confronted by my father's lawyer, not by me, because my father made the decision that I should not be in that room, and for once I did not argue, said that his mother had been experiencing financial hardship and that he had been helping her. He said he had planned to replenish the account. He said a lot of things, and none of them contained the word sorry directed at me. My mother-in-law, when reached by phone, said the money was a gift from her son and she had no knowledge of where it originated. This was a lie, and a provable one, because there were text messages recovered as part of the process my father's lawyer set in motion, in which she asked him, specifically, when the next transfer would come and whether there was more room in the account that month. I filed for divorce in April. I was 3 months postpartum. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office on Rice Howard Way, my daughter asleep in the car seat beside me, signing documents while my hand was slightly shaking. My lawyer, a woman my father's lawyer recommended, sharp and clear-eyed in a way that I found steadying, explained the recovery process. Because the funds originated as a deposit to a joint account, the transfers out of that account without my knowledge or consent constituted financial abuse under Alberta family law. There was a strong case for recovery. There was also a potential fraud filing. My husband's lawyer contacted my lawyer to suggest that we handle this privately and avoid a destructive legal process. My father, when I told him this, said, "Tell them no." That was it, just tell them no. The civil suit was filed in May. My mother-in-law was named as a co-respondent for the portion transferred to her account. My husband, it turned out, had no significant assets in his own name. The commissions that had been slow were in fact being deposited into a separate personal account I had never known existed. He'd been running 2 financial lives in parallel for the entire length of our marriage. The family court proceedings took 14 months. I'm not going to describe all of it because some of it is still under a confidentiality provision, and also because I do not want to spend more words on my ex-husband than I already have. What I will say is that the forensic accountant traced a total of $216,000 in transfers out of the joint account over 18 months. The court ordered full recovery plus interest. My mother-in-law settled separately before the civil case went to hearing. My ex-husband's real estate license was referred for a conduct review by RECA, the Real Estate Council of Alberta, based on concerns identified during the financial discovery process. I won't say what happened after that. Some things are still in motion. What I will say is this. I moved back to Edmonton proper, into a rental near the River Valley, close enough to my father that he can walk over on Sunday mornings. He brings the chai, I make eggs. My daughter is 14 months old now, and she has discovered that she can pull herself upright using the coffee table, and she looks every single time at whoever is in the room to see if they noticed. She gets that from me, I think. That need to check whether you're seen. My father, the week after the court order came through, sat across from me at that same kitchen table, my new kitchen table in my new place, and said something I've been thinking about ever since. He said, "You didn't do anything wrong. You trusted. That's not a flaw." I told him I should have looked at the account. I should have asked more questions. I should have pushed back on the first deflection. The first time he made me feel like the finances were too complicated for me. My father said, "Probably, and you'll do those things now, but none of that means what he did was your fault." I sat with that for a while. He's not wrong, but I still sit with it. What I want anyone to hear, if you've ever let someone else manage the money because they said it would be easier, because they made you feel like it was above your level, because every time you asked there was an answer just technical enough to make you doubt yourself. Keep a separate account. Check it. Know every number. Not because you expect to be betrayed, but because your financial literacy is not his to manage. It was never his to manage. It was a Sunday morning, 8 months into the legal process, when I looked at my daughter standing at the window watching the snow and thought, I'm going to be okay. Not fine, not like it didn't happen, just okay. That was enough for that morning, and most mornings since, it's still enough. There's a moment I keep coming back to. Not the courtroom, not the forensic accountant's report, not even the morning my father sat next to me at the kitchen table and we watched 18 months of my money move somewhere I had never seen. The moment I keep coming back to is smaller than any of that. It's me, safety pinning a pair of scrub pants in the bathroom at 6 in the morning, telling myself this was just a tight season, that things would even out, that I just needed to work a little harder. I think about the version of me who believed that, and I don't feel angry at her. I feel something more like grief. Because she wasn't stupid, she was trusting, which is a different thing, even though it was used against her in ways that looked the same from the outside. What I understand now, and I mean really understand, not just intellectually, but in the way that changes how you move through a room, is that what my husband and his mother did had a logic to it. It didn't happen all at once. It happened in small deflections, in answers just technical enough to make me doubt my own questions. In a tone that said the finances were complicated, that I wouldn't quite follow, that he had it handled, that erosion of confidence was not accidental. People who do what they did rely on it. They need you to stop asking. And I stopped asking. That's the part that took me the longest to work through, not what they did. How I was gradually taught to not look. My father has a phrase he uses when he's describing someone he respects. He says, "She knows what she's standing on." He means it as a kind of wholeness. Someone who understands their own situation clearly enough that they can't be easily moved. I didn't know what I was standing on inside my own marriage. I had let that knowledge be taken from me piece by piece until I was safety pinning my work clothes and calling it a tight season. The outcome of this story, the court order, the recovery, the conduct review, those happened because the truth was eventually on the table. That's a form of cause and effect I believe in, without needing to call it anything mystical. When you stop hiding what's real, when you stop protecting a version of events that isn't true, things eventually have to move. My father looked at that account screen and said what he saw. That honesty set everything else in motion. It always does, eventually. What I wish I had held on to through all of it, what I would tell anyone in a version of what I went through, is this. Your financial picture is not someone else's to manage. Knowing your numbers is not a sign of distrust. It is basic self-respect. It is the kind of clear-eyed thinking that protects you, not because you're suspicious of everyone, but because you understand your own life. I handed that clarity over because it seemed easier, and someone took advantage of the space I left. And the other thing, the harder thing, is that getting through the 14 months of legal process with a newborn and a split-seam salary took a kind of stubbornness I didn't know I had, not toughness in the loud sense. Just getting up the next morning, making the next appointment, signing the next document, showing up to the next hearing. That kind of endurance doesn't announce itself, it just keeps going, and one day you look back and realize you didn't stop. My daughter pulls herself up on the coffee table now and looks around the room to see if anyone noticed. I always notice. I want her to know, every single time, that she was seen. That's what I'm building now. A life where we both know exactly what we're standing on.